Hello and welcome to another live stream from How to Code Well. My name is Peter Fisher, as always. Today we're going to talk about Docker in Motion, as well as some JavaScript testing and stuff. Last week in Coffee and Code, we were talking about some news regarding Node.js. We're not going to do that today. We're not going to talk too much about web development news. Today, we're going to focus on two things. The first, Docker in Motion, which is something I'll talk about in a minute, but also we're going to follow up with what we were talking about last time with QUnit. So I'm actually wanting to write some unit tests, some functional tests, I should say, in JavaScript around the Monopoly game. So the first thing I want to talk about is Docker in Motion. This is something that I've been working on for quite some time now, and it's launched, it's live, it's in what's called Meep. I'll just show you the page. It is a Docker course that I've put together for Manning Publications. Now, if you don't know, Manning Publications is a organization company that has lots of publications on programming and technical bits and pieces. So I'm honored to be on that platform. The course Docker in Motion it teaches basically the fundamentals of Docker in a very animated and sort of raw way, if you will. And so it teaches you all sorts of things to do with Docker. It teaches you image management and container management, Docker files and so forth. I'll get into the specifics in a minute. Like I said, I've been working on this for quite some time. It's been consuming a lot of my free time. I'm so happy that it's launched. If you haven't seen it already, I've got an announcement video that I did last week, and also I have a 50% discount code as well that I can give you in a minute. But I just want to talk a little bit about the actual course itself. I do apologize. I hope today doesn't sound too much of a sales pitch, but this is something that I've been striving towards and doing for such a long time. I thought it would be a good idea to dedicate a portion of Coffee and Code this episode to Docker in Motion. Now, Docker in Motion has about 7 modules in it. So it covers the fundamentals of Docker right from basically the beginner level. There's a lot of theory in the first couple of modules. We talk about what is Docker, what is the difference between containerization and virtualization. We talk about all sorts of reasons why you should and shouldn't use Docker. We talk about what should be included in Docker. And we talk about web development in sort of a way that you can kind of like what's the right term? So I talk about a messy setup. So this is a setup that a lot of web developers are familiar with, especially when they're working in, say, an agency where you've got lots of projects that you're working on, and there is a problem where you've got lots of these projects and they all depend on different dependencies and so forth. So that's kind of like the way I started. I'll show you some previews of the course in a minute. And then it kind of progresses onto the technical side of Docker. So explaining about Docker layers, Docker images, the image layers, the intermediate layers and so forth. How to build a Docker image yourself. So creating Docker files, pushing them up to a Docker registry, so we talk about that as well. Also, some bits and pieces on Docker security as well. And we basically produce this this web server and database server, and we link them together. And then after that, we talk about volumes and storing data in containers, as well as Docker Compose. And a lot more than that as well. So it is quite a packed course. It's about, at the moment, it stands at around about 4.5 hours, but once it's done, I believe it's going to be much longer than that. And it's in what's called Meep, which is Manning's Early Access Program, which means that you can purchase the course now, and as things develop, as things change, you'll be getting those when they come. It also means that you have access to the forum. So the forum allows you to put suggestions in, so I can tweak the course if needed. And also you can ask questions to me if you don't understand something in the course, or if you want something explained slightly differently. It also enables a community around it as well, which is fantastic. So I'm really, really chuffed about having this finally publicized. This is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a long, long time. And if you followed me on the How to Code Well channel, you'll know that from the early stages, I was doing a lot of Docker tutorials. So I've done a lot of Docker machine tutorials. I've done a lot of Docker container tutorials. And I'm probably, going into the 20s of those tutorials. And I changed my focus to other bits and pieces in web development. So PHP and Linux and JavaScript and HTML and all of that stuff. But the reason why I kind of shifted focus is because I was doing this course offline, to actually produce it. One thing I will mention is it isn't just me who's done this course. I mean, it's me who's done the script writing, who's done the actual narration. I've created the animation, and basically anything you see and hear is from me, but it's gone through a very vigorous amount of feedback and peer review, and so forth. So it's been seen by digital editors. It's been seen by all sorts of people in the field in Docker, and they've suggested changes that I've done, and they've suggested alterations and tweaks, and really got into the nitty gritty bits of the course. It is, in my opinion, streets ahead of the usual tutorials that I have on my How to Code Well channel. And the reason simply is that I am the one who's doing the code. I'm the one who's doing the recording and the editing, and it's just me on the channel. It's just me doing that. Whereas on this, I've done the recording, I've pushed it up, and it gets peer reviewed, and half the time I need to do something that is either something that I perhaps have said in a wrong way. So there's a professionalism. There's a professionalism to it. So even little things like pronunciation. So if I'm not pronouncing myself correctly, that gets picked up. So it is such a different type of course compared to the How to Code Well stuff. So I do think that has rubbed off in some way to the at least the recent tutorials, especially the recent PHP tutorials that I've done, and going forward. So I'm actually learning a lot from this process by having lots of people externally influencing the course and tailoring the course and stuff. It's taken me from, with the How to Code Well channel, I kind of think, well, this is something that would be useful for people to learn, because I've learned it, and it might be useful. But with this course, I've done a series of proposals to actually get the course to where it's at, and that's been refined, and it's been tailored and thought of from other perspectives. So the perspective of someone who is setting up a lot of projects in their web development sort of environments, if you will, and it's had lots of influence from people who have different, not just web development views, but also other views to do with Docker. So a lot of DevOpsy type stuff as well. So yeah, what I'll do is I'll just I think if I can get the sound off. So to talk about the course, you end up with a lot of this stuff. So it's highly animated. The animation I've done, like I've said, all on my own, and the actual script writing I've done, but that's been tailored and tweaked by lots of other people. I've got the sound off, but I've got a narration going on over this. This is me explaining certain parts of the different dependencies that we all have. And I talk about the issues with different hardware and so forth. So the reasons why Docker is such a good thing, or the reason, the issues that we sometimes come across, well, not, I shouldn't say sometimes, all the time. So how can we replicate and isolate each of these environments? And then I go through an example of actually talking about splitting up projects and isolating projects. So I'll let this run through, but essentially what you've got is a series of these animations, and then later on, once the theory has been established, we then talk about the code from a very sort of granular point of view. So from going from absolutely nothing to having some Docker containers running, Docker images running that you can share and use. And also there is a GitHub repo and a Docker registry repo that I'm using throughout this course. And yeah, I mean, it's something that I am extremely proud of, and it's I'm still pinching myself that this has actually come through. So here I'm talking about having lots of projects on your, say, laptop. Let's say if you're a freelancer and you've done lots of projects, then you need to isolate those, because one project's configuration can bleed into another project's configuration and so forth. So it really does go from the granular level, and this is me talking about isolating. How do you go about isolation and so forth. So I'll just skip ahead, and then talking about how we declutter. So these are previews. These are previews of the course, and yeah, it's been a very interesting time for me, because I've been learning a lot of stuff to do with teaching and learning and building up a course as I go. So I'll give you the link. Hi Kevin. So do I mention any managers like Kubernetes? I don't in this course, but I do loosely. I'm not going to give too much away in terms of the deployment, what I talk about in deployment, but I do discuss it, yes. Where is the link? Bear with me just a mo. So if you're interested, that is the link to the course. Now there is a 50% off that I can offer you. It's kind of like one of my perks, if you will. And the code is that. So if you put that into the code, as a discount code, you'll be able to get 50% off. Now, Manning have a lot of these promotions that go on, and when new promotions come on, I'll certainly let you guys know. I've been trying to push this on social media and all sorts of places. So I'll as soon as I'm aware of other things in the future, then I'll let you guys know. But it's normally, let's go back. So it's normally $59, but you can get it for 50% off of that. Now here it says table of contents, but that's actually there's far more. So there's actually 7 units, or modules as they call them. So we talk about Docker containers, we talk about Docker images, we talk about some security regarding Docker, and we talk about database management, how to have data stored, because that's quite a huge thing with Docker. Because obviously if you lose your container, you lose the data unless you've actually created the storage unit. And then we talk about Docker Compose, which is something that I'm really excited about, because there's been a lot of requests for Docker Compose on the How to Code Well channel, and I have been saying that this is on the schedule, but really the schedule is this course. So yeah, I'm thrilled to bits that this is finally out, and finally in Meep. So there's me talking about some if you've got a bug in one place, then you've probably got a bug in others. Yeah, the animation that I've done is pretty fun, but in my opinion anyway. So that's isolation, and then we talk about splitting up Docker and so forth. what should be inside containers, and then why the differences between virtual machines. So I just skip ahead, and then Docker for the win, talking about Docker. So like I said, the first kind of first couple of modules, theory based, and then after that it's extremely heavy codey. So it's and I've been coding obviously on the command line, and been using my IDE, which is PHP Storm, for the Docker files, and all of that is animated too. So when something happens, I will stop the code and then animate around that, so you can actually see what it is that I'm actually talking about, or what's actually happened. Why has that Docker image changed in that kind of way? So that's Docker in Motion. I hope you guys check it out. Something I should say is that, oh, hi Slayer Darth. Now, Slayer, I'm going to just stop here because I need to apologize to Slayer Darth. He tried to speak to me last time, and I totally just had no eyes on the chat. So I do apologize, Slayer, and I do apologize to anyone else who is trying to say hello and mention some bits and pieces on the chat. I am trying to have one eye on the chat as well as one eye on what it is that I'm doing. So also with Docker in Motion, I've mentioned that we have a forum that you can use. So the forum is basically there to talk to me and talk to other people in the community about Docker. So if there's anything that I've mentioned in the course that you're not happy with, then do let me know in that. And also, if you've got any kind of questions, then do throw them in there too. So I'm keeping an eye on that as well. But that's basically Docker in Motion. As things progress, as more units become available, there is about 7 of them. I will be talking about them in far more detail as things develop. But anyway, that's basically Docker in Motion. Do check it out. You got 50% off if you use that code. Sorry, just checking. It's Slayer Darth. It's a right bugger about Selenium not being compatible with Firefox anymore. I was talking about it to some colleagues of mine quite recently, and it's quite a shame because there's a lot of people use that. But the next thing that I'm going to demonstrate right now is QUnit in jQuery. Oh, well, I shouldn't say in jQuery because you don't need QUnit with jQuery. You can just use QUnit on its own. But yeah, with Phantom.js, Slayer Darth, I've used that a couple of times, but I really struggled with getting that to work because I guess there was some issue with my configuration. But in my opinion, with these testing frameworks, you just need something that is quick and easy to spin up. And I still am a little bit frustrated with how JavaScript has so much packages that have being you have to depend on. I suppose it's the same in, say, PHP, but hey ho. Right, so bear with me a minute. I'm just going to grab some coffee. It is Coffee and Code after all. So today I'm drinking I don't normally drink coffee at this time, but I've had so much work recently that I need to keep awake. Right. Oh, really? Does it, Slayer Darth? Okay. Yeah, maybe I should check it out more often then. Maybe I should take a look at Phantom.js again. Yeah, I mean, primarily I do a lot of PHP work, so I use the internal server quite a bit. I use Codeception quite a bit to test APIs and so forth. So I don't really have a lot to do with the front end in that sort of manner. So I try and test the back end stuff first. make sure the data is actually hanging together rather than worry too much about the front end. Because the thing is that a lot of the back ends that I've been working on, a lot of the APIs that I've been working on, have so many front ends because it's all it's API driven. And I think if you focus on the one front end, you can quite easily tailor the back end to that front end. You have to kind of think about it from a very abstract way. That if the front end, let me pause that, otherwise that's just going to go off. But yeah, so I try and test, especially APIs, from a perspective of testing the structure rather than the response, because you can't say that one structure is always going to be the same. As long as it's you can't say that one response is always going to be the same depending on what it is that you want to test. But you can test the structure. You can say that this value needs to be either an integer or a string, that kind of thing. And Codeception does that beautifully. I did do a lot of working with people who were using Selenium once, and they were finding it great. They weren't actually sort of... I don't want to give them any disrespect, but they weren't technically minded. They were focusing purely on things like user experience and user journeys and how a user can get to one point to another point, and they were testing out like I said, the user journeys. So they needed to have this repeatable process that they could check from going from one place to another. But yeah, anyway, let's move on to some code now. Let's talk about some bits and pieces to do with the Monopoly game that I showed last time. This is basically, for anyone who didn't see last week, I was asked to do a Monopoly game written in JavaScript for an interview. Before I went into the interview, I never got the interview, so this is I don't know why I'm showing you this lot, but do I use Vim, Slaredarth? Yes, I do. I use Vim a lot. I used to use Nano quite frequently, but I find Vim a lot easier. You just have to remember how to exit. So yeah, going back to this stuff, we've got the this Monopoly game, which I'll show here, and it essentially is a computer and a user, and you essentially have two pots of money here, so 1,500 on each, and it's a turn-based game. So you just click start game. And sorry, I'm just reading the chat. So Slaredarth is working on a Vim plugin validating your HTML. Or I would be very interested to know. Oh yes, please do. Please send that along. I will be very interested to see that. So for anyone who isn't watching this or hasn't got the chat on here, because I obviously don't have the chat running in the live stream. There's a fella on the chat by the name of Slaredarth, and he's creating a Vim plugin. I hope you don't mind me saying that. And it's validating HTML and CSS. So yes, I'd be very interested to check that out and provide feedback. So do let me know. Put that in get hold of me somehow, Twitter and Facebook or whatever, or even on here, and just post me I presume it's on GitHub maybe. Let me know, and I'll check that out. I might even, talk about it on here, if that's okay with you. So anyway, this is my role-playing sort of thing. It's basically just got this one button that you click, and it changes between you and the computer, and it talks about, when you land on a thing that you can buy, like Whitehall, for example, it'll ask you that, and you can either press cancel, or you can press OK. Now, I should have pressed OK here, but yeah, so press OK, and then that drops down to that amount, and you see that you've got that, you purchased that there. And with the computers, it's very random. Even, I mean, this computer role is extremely random too. So it's a random Boolean whether or not the computer has said no, that they're going to buy that. So yeah, and I was talking about, I did this, gosh, when did I do this? This was ages ago. This was, 2 years ago, right? 2 years ago, and I'm extremely self-critical. I am the most self-critical person I think that I'm aware of. I never try and everything I do code-wise, if it's over 3 months, I think it needs to be just changed, altered, because it is, things move on, things progress, my way of thinking changes. The code that I've written is pretty damn awful, and I mean, I wrote it 2 years ago, but I don't want that to be seen as an excuse. The code needs to be highly refactored, and it needs to be turned, in my opinion, into something a little bit more modern, a little bit more ES6. I was given an evening to do this in, and this is what I came up with. I basically bashed this out in a couple of hours, and my problem with this, and my problem with other pieces of code, not just code that I've written, but also, I mean, a lot of time when I as a freelancer, I get given code to finish, or I get projects to sort of like deploy and all that stuff. And the first question I have is, how confident can I be when I actually, when I do this? How confident am I? I mean, the developer who might have gone before me may have said that this can be finished off in a matter of weeks or days or whatever, and then that responsibility is then put on me. And so I need to have a level of confidence. And if there is 0 unit tests, if there is 0 functional tests, if there is nothing that will automatically tell me that something is actually working or not working, then I have 0 confidence in both my own code and everyone else's. I'm extremely defensive like that when it comes to reviewing code, especially code like this, which is 2 years old. So, I mean, yes, okay, so I've pressed a load of buttons there and things have actually worked. Whoops, let's not do that. And things have actually worked, so you could argue that, yes, that is great. But as a developer, I want to change this into, like I said, ES6, more modern stuff. And I want to ensure that when I do that, things don't break. Things that, and as a programmer, the worst thing is unexpected bugs, right? I mean, I know that there are bugs in here. If I scroll down here, I know that there are things that don't work because I've created a list of known issues. But the real gotcha for any developer is that when you go and refactor a bunch of code, something else, like, for example, you're working on some stuff sort of here, right? And you fix something in there, or you refactor something in there, and then something down here, where's my finger, there, is broken, which is completely unrelated to this. That happens all the time. That happens all the time because maybe you haven't been given enough time to review the dependencies, the impacts, and all of that stuff. So I'm a big advocate for testing work. And to me, it can be either TDD or BDD. So I'm just going to lift my mic up because it's for some reason my mic seems to be. Oh, bear with me a minute. My mic has a mind of its own. There we go. So, yeah, good. It seems to lower itself, which means that I have to go and lower. Anyway, what was I saying? So, yeah, unit tests, functional tests, it doesn't really matter in my opinion when you do them. So they could be TDD. You could do it. You could test drive yourself. You could test it out before you actually develop it. In my experience, though, you don't often get a lot of time to do that. The worst thing is to go to a client and say, yeah, I haven't finished the project, but I've tested it. I mean, they're not gonna accept that, are they? They're not gonna go, yeah, okay, you've got a lot of broken unit tests, but you don't actually have any code, to anything that you've developed. So TDD, in my experience, kind of only works when you've got a large development team, right, where you've got this time, and also the company that you're working for has been educated in the fact that TDD is a good thing, right? So someone in the past has actually put their hand up and said, we should really be using TDD, and then had a discussion and a meeting and all that stuff. But a lot of the time as a freelancer, you have to just get on with it and batter the work out. And so I will put my hand up and say that a lot of my tests have been done after I do the code. And I know that can be seen as quite a controversial thing, but to be honest, when you're a freelancer and you've got you've got a daily rate, and they just want to get the work out the door, right? Then you tell them that you're going to TDD it. You'll explain what that is, and then they'll ask you the time. So I try and always do that. But they obviously try and squeeze the time. They try and as a freelancer, you're obviously put on stuff right at the, you might be given work right at the end. So you've just been brought in to a company right at the end of their project, and so you've suddenly landed on a piece of work that hasn't got any tests or TDD or whatever. So you don't have time to do that. Time is an issue. That to me is not a very good excuse. It is an excuse, but it isn't really a good excuse. I wish I could say that I TDD everything. I really do, but I don't. And that is a bit of a shame. I do feel though that we need, as a community, we kind of need to acknowledge that is a good thing, and train other people and educate not just other developers, but also the actual company, the actual IT team, the IT departments. Why is this taking so long? Well, it's being tested. Therefore, at the end of it, you're going to get something that works, and we can say that it works, and also that anything else that gets slotted in afterwards will work along that, and we can assure you with those things. And it also goes hand in hand with things like continual delivery and all that stuff. Sorry, this microphone seems to be going down. Right, I think that's okay. I'm gonna have to get another stand. This is becoming ridiculous. So anyway, enough of my chit chat. Let's talk about how we can actually test this. So I'm not actually going to go into the nitty gritty stuff of unit testing. I think right now what I'm going to do is do some functional tests. So just ensure that these things work. That if I was to change a value in here, then that is actually shown. Test that this is actually being displayed, and when I click the button, something actually appears. I'm not going to go in too much detail in terms of like the actual content, because that, in my opinion, would be a unit test. So for example, if I was to click on here, and I was to get this alert where it says £320, then click OK, that would go in there. That would minus 320. That, in my opinion, is a unit of work. So there's 3 units of work there. You press OK, that comes up. That deducts 320 from here. So that would be a unit of work. Another unit of work is that being added to here, and so forth. The actual functional test would be you click this and then that goes in there, or maybe that's an acceptance test. So I'm actually going to just be testing the display at the moment, because what I want to do is like I said, refactor this stuff later on. And as I do that, I'll be then looking at doing it in a TDD kind of way, I think. So what I'm going to do is use QUnit, and to do that I need some bits and pieces, npm, and QUnit itself, also some Gulp as well. The actual code here, let's go back to Monopoly. Doesn't have anything to do with testing here. There's nothing in here at all. So let's start some bits. So let's go into the terminal. We are currently in the directory that is on this GitHub repo. And what I'm going to do is just install QUnit and install Gulp. The reason why we're installing Gulp is that I want to create, let's do a mcdir, I want to create a test directory here, and I want to in this test directory I would like to have my testing scripts. And when I use npm, when I use a package.json file, it's obviously going to put everything in my node underscore module folder. And I really don't like the idea of exposing my file structure to users. So I wouldn't have, for example, /n node underscore modules /QUnit blah 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 blah. So I would like to copy all the things that I am wanting to use as testing into this testing directory, and a way you could do that is Gulp. Now I like normal, I have absolutely no setup. So this is I mean, I literally just pulled this down before this chat, so I need to install all of these bits and pieces. So let me think what's the best way to do that. So we need Gulp, we need QUnit, obviously. Yeah, okay, so what I'm going to do, let's just see if I've got, yeah, we do. Okay, good. I panicked then. I was like, do we actually have npm? Oh, Kevin, couldn't I find a container with all this already? I could, you know. Yeah, well, that's clever. Yeah, no, I could, but yeah, I just decided right now that not to. But no, I could find a container. I could create a container, couldn't I? Maybe I'll do that. I don't know. But yeah, no, I could I could find a container. The thing is, with Docker Hub, a lot of the things that I've been using, a lot of the things that I've been using with the Docker Hub, they've either been so far out of date, or they've been they're just incompatible with how I want to crowbar things in. So and also when you're using the when you're creating Docker files, you are creating them specific to what you're using. So you can't rely on other people's Docker files, because the responsibility of maintaining that Docker file isn't obviously with you, it's with someone else. So when they go and change something and you go and do an update, you need to ensure that whatever you're working with is compatible. But yeah, I'm not going to do a Docker tutorial today. I might do one later on. I just want to get this up and running. But so what I need to do is an npm install save dev, to save it to as a dev dependencies, and also save. And I'm going to do QUnit JS like that. Now, once this is done, you can quite easily put this into a Docker file, I suppose. I mean, you would need to think about the requirements. So, for example, if we went to node modules, for instance, here, not node modules, sorry. No, that didn't create the package JSON. Oh, sorry. When you have your package JSON file, you would be wanting to put that into the container, and that would be the thing that you would use to pull down your dependencies. So what I'm going to do, going to test a minute. Let's just remove that, because what I've done foolishly is put the node modules into the test file. I should have done that, sorry, here. So install, there we go. And whilst that goes on, I'm going to just bear with me a mo. Bear with me. Sorry, I'm just finding my notes. Here we go. Right, so what I've done is I've installed it into the root directory here. The problem with this, even though I've done save dev and save itself, it hasn't actually created the package.json file. You need to have that first. So what I'm going to do is just create one. So here I'm just going to touch package.json. And what I'm going to do is go into here. So now we have the nodes module package.json file. I'm just going to create the file in here, and then I'll install all the bits and pieces too. So this is a really great website. This is browsenpm.org. It gives you basically a template, a very interactive template of what the package.json file is. And I use this quite frequently when I forget the certain keys that you need. So that's what I was looking for then. So here is the dependencies for the live, well, I say live, for I guess you would say production stuff. And then here is the dependencies for development and test. So this is where I would be putting all the QUnit and so forth in here, because I obviously don't want QUnit to be installed when you are in production. There's no point. So what I'm going to do is, I can't actually copy any of that. That's a shame, isn't it? Or can I? Let's see. Can I copy that? Yeah, I can. Oh, brilliant. So that obviously needs to be like that. And like so. We also need to have, let's just bring that up to the top here. We also need to have on what is it that we need? We don't need to have it, but we should have it. So the repository. If you don't have the repository, you get moaned at. So I'm just going to copy that. Go into here. And I usually put all of the meta stuff at the top. I don't think it really matters where it is that you put them. We're obviously not using these. So what I'm going to do is just have that as blank. Change all of this. It's type of GitHub, but the code is here, which is there. Into. So just copy that like that. You also get moaned out because you don't have a license. Now I'm going to again hold my hand up and say I need to research licenses. This is something that I really I've been a developer for well over a decade, and I need to focus on I need to look at the licenses and the differences of licenses. I feel quite ashamed to say that I don't have a lot of knowledge in licenses. I did go to a talk once on the Apache license, and it's something that I just think we just need to learn. So I'm going to have to schedule some time just to focus on that. So okay, this now we've got our very dummy package .json file. So what I can do is do oops, sorry, I'm going to have to keep switching each time. Let's clear the screen down so you can actually see what I'm doing. So we've got QUnit installed, but it hasn't been installed in this package.json file. So what I need to do is actually uninstall it and then install it using the save and the save dev, which is something that is a bit odd. I would have thought that the save would have created your package.json file if it wasn't there, but hey. So it's npm, and I can't remember what the file, the command is. So is uninstall, I think. Is that right? Yeah, uninstall. So npm unin. Well, I'll tell you what I could do, just as ease, is just do I should be able to do that. RV node modules. There we go. Clear that down. Okay. So if I went up to there, hopefully this is going to update the package.json file. Hopefully. So yeah, this is where it warns you that there's no license, right? So that looks to be installed. Now have you update? Yeah, see that? Oh, I say see that, pointing at a screen that you guys can't see. How stupid is that? So there we go. It's now been added, QUnit. So I suppose that's my first little gripe with npm. If you don't have your package.json file and you do a save, forward slash, what I'm talking about, hyphen save, then it's not going to save it because it doesn't know where you need to save it to. I would have expected it to save or find the package.json file in the current working directory. If there isn't one, create one if you've got permissions to. But anyway, so that's QUnit. There's other bits and pieces that we need to install too, like Gulp. So let's go back to the browser. So we've got the QUnit stuff. We'll be looking at that in a minute, but also Gulp. So this is, I love this. This is how you install it. Just these commands. It's such a beautiful way of actually installing software. So I'm literally just going to copy these and paste them. I know that I've got Gulp, the actual command line installed, but I'm going to do that anyway. So let's just go back to here, clear this down, paste that. Permission denied. Oh. Ew. Oh, well, that's a bit annoying, isn't it? Can I do that in here, maybe? No. Okay, so it's saying that I've got some permission errors on local lib Gulp. Let's just have a look. Bear with me, Mo. I'm just going to take a look at some bits and pieces on my local machine. I really should have checked this beforehand. So the permission denied. Let's clear that. I need to play some hold music, really, don't I? That's what I need to do. Let's have a look at the ls-al of that directory. So that's in. That's a bit weird. It says I've got permissions to do that. So, okay. Okay, yeah. This is I was fiddling about with something for a client the other day, and I was installing some of the global packages, and it's freaking out. Okay. I should just be able to do a churn on that. So that's in. Actually, I might be able to get away with. No, I don't want to do this as sudo. That's the thing. I don't want to do this as a root user. I don't want to have to be running sudo all the time. Yeah, unless you're, I that's the problem, Sledarth. I'm not confident. No, confident isn't the right word. I'm not happy with running sudo all the time. Just because if you do something wrong, then there's always this sort of safety net, because you've got things set to a permission that you shouldn't, like for example, your SSH keys, right? You shouldn't just be able to change those SSH keys being the user that you're in. need to be chmodded correctly. They need to be chmodded to, like, I think it's 666 or something like that, or something 700, something different from a usual thing. I think by just going in as sudo is quite a so bear with me a mo. Although saying that, I am churning this. Super secret password, blah blah blah. Okay, so let's try that again. There we go. And I've just had a look at the stream, and I do apologize because it's now you're seeing this Gulp page thing. I thought you were actually looking at what I was doing. I do apologize. Essentially, what I did is I gave myself access to the directory that I couldn't get access to. So anyway. Again, it says that no license field. It's because I need to... I'm not going to create a license field because I don't know what license I need to use. So, and now it's saying that we can run touch to the Gulp file. So we create the Gulp file. Let's do ls. We have the Gulp file here. That's cool. And then if we did Gulp help, ta-da! So that's Gulp installed. Okay, so I'm just going to take a slurp of my coffee that's running cold. Maybe too much of a slurp. Okay, so like I said, the reason why we've got Gulp is that I want to move some files around. Because let me clear this down. Let me explain. So we do an ls, and we've got this test directory here. So the tests like that. Okay, there's what I'm going to do is create an index file in here for the test. And what we've got in node modules, if I did cd into node modules, we have QUnit .js. Now what I want to do is move the QUnit JS, I think it is that, yeah, QUnit JS into the test directory. And also I am hoping that they have CSS as well. I want to move that into its own CSS file, but I don't want to be linking to those files, doing a JavaScript, link, HTML link to those files to the node_modules thing. That is, in my opinion, a big no-no, because you are divulging the structure of your file system, right? So if you've got like / then node_modules and blah blah blah, you are divulging what it is, libraries that you're using. It's all security type stuff. I get very nervous around seeing things like that, because a user could just quite easily discover what dependencies are required. And if there was an issue with one of those dependencies, if there was a security issue with one of those dependencies, I suppose what I'm trying to say is you are giving someone some information that is not necessary. And in this day and age where you've got all the risks of hacking and stuff like that going on, it's not a case of when. It's not a case of if. It's a case of when these days. Any little thing that you cannot give that person is a win in my book. So anyway, enough of the rant. Let's go to ls again. We're going to go into test, and I'll tell you what. Let's come off of this. Let's go into here. There we go. So yeah, we can see that the QUnit has now been installed, and Gulp. So in test, I'm just going to create a new HTML file, and I'm just going to call this index for now. That should be good, and yes, that's fine. I tell you what, just for ease, I'm going to copy all of that into here. I'll explain why in a minute. And I need to go back to here, so I need to put in a relative path like so. Now eventually all of the jQuery, all of the bootstrap and everything will be done in such a way that, you know, done via npm, via this package.json file. But for now, I'm just going to keep it as is. The whole point of doing these kind of tests is that you want to change one thing, test it, and then change another thing, and then test that, but also test what you've previously tested. So one little change at a time, yeah? All right, let's save that. So now I should be able to, hopefully, I should hopefully now. God. So earlier my machine was giving me the evil beach ball of doom, spinning beach ball of doom. Anyone who's on a Mac will understand what I mean by spinning beach ball of doom. When that happens and the whole thing freezes, you usually have to go out and get yourself a coffee and wait for a couple of minutes. So that happened twice today. So I'm hoping that this is going to be okay. If the recording sounds pretty pants, then please do let me know. Excellent. Okay, so what I've done in here is I've actually created another file. You know, I've opened this out in another browser. So this is now my test page. I'll explain why I've done that in just a second, but I just want to go back to the old code here and just change that to be testing. Okay, cool. So now I need to include the node modules, QUnit. Why have we got node modules in there? That's interesting. QUnit, and then that I need to include that JavaScript file into that test directory. And the way I want to do that is actually copy that and that into this test directory. So I want to create a JavaScript and CSS directory in here and then copy that. The idea being is that I would like to have this as isolated as I could. So if someone just wants to test this, they can, and not have to worry about the other bits and pieces. So as before, eventually I'll have Bootstrap and jQuery. Blimey, that's a very low version. In that kind of manner too. So, and that's why we've got the Gulp file. So let's go and create some bits and pieces for the Gulp. Let's create a task. And to do that, let's close that. To do that, we click on docs, goes to this GitHub page. I'm looking for, yeah, here we go, SRCs. So to do that, we use this. So we pass in the source, and then we pass in a destination. So we copy anything in source, we do we pipe it to a bunch of other processes, and then we move that to a destination. So what I want to do is copy the QUnit and the QUnit JS file, QUnit CSS file, and move it into this into the test directory, like so. So somewhere in here, I'm hoping, yeah, there is tasks. So I'm just going to copy that and go into old PHP Storm here. Copy you. I'm also going to need to require Gulp. I'll do that in a minute. So I just want to do build test. And the idea, we don't need that, I don't think. The idea is that this thing here is going to be ran whenever you want to, before you run any tests. So what I need to do is, is do something like this, where I'm requiring Gulp, because you can see Gulp is undefined. Whoops. So up here, and let's close that down. So let's call you that Gulp and require Gulp, like so. Save that. And then I can start actually writing the process, the task, if you will. So I don't need to pass any parameters into the task. I don't need to have any aliases either. What I can do, therefore, is to remove that, and I should be able to save. I should now, if I go into the terminal, I should hopefully, if I remember this right, Gulp. Is it tasks? I haven't used this in a while. Is it tasks? Working directories changed to That's a bit annoying. It's thrown an error. Where am I? I'm in. Oh, it's because, sorry, my working directory. Sure. Well, I'm hoping that that's the reason. Is it Gulp? Help. Bear with me a minute. Yeah. How many times can I spell Gulp wrong, hey? How many times can I spell Gulp wrong tonight? So yeah, it is tasks. Is it tasks? Yeah, with an S. Gulp tasks. Gulp tasks. Yeah. Oh, Pete's dyslexia has stopped him again, eh? That's I should really stop using that as an excuse. I should just say laziness. Cool. So now we've got this build tasks thing here. If you don't laugh, you've got to cry. If you don't cry, you've got to laugh. Let's clear that down and actually start doing some bits and pieces, shall we? So, like I said before, we're going to move some files around. These, what they're called streams. So we have the stream here where it's Gulp. You're putting in the source path. You can then pipe that to other bits, other processes. And I love this. This is very much like, Linux, very much a sort of a Unixy type thing. You can pipe things to pipe applications, standard input to standard output to standard input. I love that. And then you do something at the end, so Gulp destination. So you do a bunch of stuff and then you put it in the destination. So if I wanted to, I could minify, I could uglify all of these things and create a single JavaScript file, a single CSS file. So yeah, I mean, maybe I'll do that. So let's go back to the old here, where it says do stuff. Now we're going to do a couple of bits in here. So we're going to move the node modules Gulp, node module QUnit JS. We're going to move that. So what I'm going to do is above here, I'm just going to create some variables. So var test dir is test, and var node modules. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. There's no point, is there? Just doing a variable for one value, that's pointless. I mean, it's at the moment I'm only doing the test thing, so there's no need to do that. So let's put this into a string, node modules, and this is I tell you what, the easiest way for me to do this without getting it wrong is, sorry guys, I realized that the stream was pointed to the wrong screen. The easiest way for me to not get this wrong, and I say this with zero confidence because it probably will go wrong, is to do let's do a cat of node modules. I just want to get the path right. So QUnit, then I think it's QUnit again, and then JS. Yeah, so I'm just going to do that, then copy this. That's a little trick that I do, just using the tab on the keyboard for it to do the hard work otherwise there's going to be a spelling error probably. So paste that into here. So I've now pasted that into that bit there, and go back into the old terminal. Let's clear that down. Let's close that and then do a cat. It could be it could be anything, but whatever, CP, whatever. Just something that allows you to do. I mean, I think you can actually just do. No, because it's and then it's test, and then there. So I want QUnit to go into that, and I would like that to be in. So let's remove those for now. I would like that to be in here. So that would be in test /JS/QUnit.js. So essentially what I've done, we can remove the stream. There's no point in returning that because it's not going to. We're not going to pipe this task to anything else. So that now will hopefully move the QUnit JS file to test.js directory. And likewise, because I'm feeling confident, we'll do that in here too. Oops. So we're going to do QUnit CSS to CSS like so. Let's save that. Okay, let's give this a whirl, see what happens. This is probably going to break. Like I said, this is something that I should have sort of at least rehearsed. So if we did Gulp again, and I think, and tasks, we'll be able to get the output of tasks. And if we did Gulp build tests or test, then hopefully that will build the test, and hopefully it will move the files, perhaps. Let's have a look. Sorry, I really need to remember to keep switching these screens. I keep thinking that you guys are just sat in the office just watching. So yeah, that's now created the CSS file, the folder of CSS and the folder of JavaScript. Notice, however, it's gone and put QUnit.css and put it in there. That's not exactly what I wanted. So I'm wondering if we don't need to actually put the file path, the actual file name in there. Let's have a look. Can I just do that maybe? Let's just remove. Let's go back to the terminal. I need to learn the shortcut keys for OBS. So let's remove JS, and obviously that's a directory. And also remove CSS as well. Whoops. Go back. Okay, let's try that again. Let's do a build. Again, I wish I knew the shortcut keys. Yes, so here we go. That's now removed that QUnit.css folder and put the things in the right places. So, and it's as simple as that, right? It's as simple as that. There's no need to have any other npm copy library to do that. Gulp has the power to do that. So so there you go. So in order to run the tests, you need to do a build test command to set the tests up, if you will. So now in index, what we can do is include these things. So in the script, we can do we should be able to just do if I can spell it, JS and then QUnit.js. Yep, my IDE has found that there is one. And likewise with the CSS, we should also just be able to do this as well. So CSS / QUnit.css. Excellent. Save that. Now, let's just run this. Looks good. Nothing's changed. Oh, excuse me. This is going to be extremely cold, isn't it? Yeah. At what point does cold coffee become trendy? And I mean, maybe if I put ice cubes in that, that would taste nice. I don't know. I'm not going to try it. Okay, so that's good. Right. Because this is a test, we don't actually need to see the screen. We don't need to do this. And QUnit has a really good way of testing the DOM, the document object model. And it does it in a way called fixtures. So you create what's called a div. What's called a div? It's getting late. You create a div called, and you give it, I think it's a class. Trying to look for the documentation here. Here we are, QUnit fixture, and anything in that you can then test, right? For the DOM. So if I was to copy the QUnit this here, and just go into the code, which is this screen, and right at the bottom here in the body, right before I do any other bits, I'm just going to put that in. If we go into here and then refresh the page, you will see that we now have this testing portion up here. So this is got all the mechanics of QUnit. So you can hide past tests, you can check for globals and all of that stuff, and you can filter tests. It's actually quite a very powerful testing framework for JavaScript. It's an old one. Granted, it's a very old. I mean, it was made ages ago, and yes, I'm pretty sure there's better ones out, but it's still, in my opinion, pretty good. And again, if we go to QUnit, and I'll show you what I mean by the fixtures. So let's copy that. Go back into the code. So, okay, anything in here gets hidden. So if I was to wrap the whole block, so everything from like, the start of this container, so basically the next part of the body, and then just for my own sanity, we're going to just tab that out because that looks horrible. And tab, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so basically the whole thing is now within that div, right? In that data fixtures div. So I'm going to just save that, go back into here. Now, if I refresh, hopefully, yeah, that's now disappeared. It's disappeared, but we can still manipulate it. We can still test the elements of that. The reason why it's disappeared is because you don't really need to worry about it, because it's, you should be worried about the test. You shouldn't be worried about the interface at this point. Which I suppose, yeah, this certainly isn't a alternative to Selenium. Going back to the Selenium talk I did last week, but it's for what I want to achieve, it's good enough, I think. So let's actually start running some tests, shall we? Because that's what we're here for. So I'm just going to run this quickly first, just to prove that this is working. So let's copy that. So this is just a test to ensure that 1 is 1. Go back into here, and we're just going to throw it up here. Now it does say to put the QUnit stuff at the bottom, but I'm not. I probably should, but let's just save that. Refresh this, and we should now get, yeah, we've got that has now been passed. If I was to change that to be, let's say 1 is equal to 2 is equal to 1 or something like that, if in some crazy parallel universe that 2 is equal to 1, that should now fail. Yeah, it's quite an obvious fail, right? So it tells you what it's expected, a true, and the result was false, and then it tells you where it failed. So it's, in my opinion, this is actually very powerful, and we're going to test now some of the bits of the DOM. So let's go back to the code. Right, so testing the OK assert is just asserting that the value is true, right? So we can we look for anything within the data QUnit data fixtures element, and we can inspect the element like you would just normally inspect an element, like in the web development toolbar, or if you just use because we've got jQuery running, you can just use jQuery to inspect the element. Now I should say that you don't need jQuery for QUnit. QUnit is obviously built to test jQuery, but you can use it yourself, but you don't need jQuery to have QUnit. So you could use this in a very raw JavaScript kind of manner. So you could use your get element by IDs and so forth. But just for time, we're going to use jQuery because we're running jQuery. We might as well use what we've got, right? So one thing I'm going to test here is we're just going to ensure that we have a message board, and we're going to ensure that the message board, when it starts, the message board being this lovely black console. Sorry, this bit here. This is the message board. Making sure that the message board isn't empty when it starts, right? So when it starts, we have this output. So I'm not actually going to test what the output is, but I'm just going to make sure that we have output in this, because some of this output might change. But if it doesn't have any output when it starts, that's obviously a bug, right? So I should really stop clicking. There we go. Right, so let's go back to the old thing here. So we're looking for ID message board. So I'm just going to copy that and scroll to the top here. Now, obviously, because we're using jQuery, we can just do this. And we can do that. So message board. And I'm just going to equal that to a variable. So var like so. And we're going to get the text. So we need to check the length of that text of that text. Dot length. Okay, so you can do is greater than 1. So if that is greater than 1, then it's passed. Let's save that. Let's see. Hopefully this is work. I'm making this up as I go along, guys. So if this doesn't work, then please feel free to laugh. And yes, that hello test. I need to change that, don't I? That has passed. So that's ensuring that when I refresh the page, there is content. So let's go back to the code. I'm just going to change to that hello test because that is pretty rubbish. What shall I call it? Message board content, maybe. Or testing length of message board contents. And instead of past, we're just going to have contents is greater than 1. I mean, contents is greater than. I'm going to do 0. I'm going to actually greater than 0, not greater than 1. Save that and refresh. Yep, there we go. So you can see that this will build up with all sorts of tests underneath, and we're going to add some more in a minute. And then what you can do is just hide the ones that have passed, so you only see the ones that have failed, which is very good in my opinion, because when you've got a whole suite of thousands of tests, hundreds of tests, you're going to be looking through a sea of green, right? So you want to, or in this case blue. So you want to ensure that the things that can be shown to you are the most obvious. Okay, so the next one, and I suppose I could do this. There's no. I'm not going to use message board variable again. So I suppose what I could do, just to refactor this a little bit, is just do that and remove that to make it even smaller. So just to ensure that that works, what I could do is message board text. Let's set that to be a blank string, so it doesn't have anything in there. And then refresh. And there we go. We've ensured we've removed the content of the message board, and now it's failed. So that's just proving that that works. What you want to make sure what you want to make sure is that you're not getting false positives. You're not, just because it's passed doesn't mean that it has actually passed. You have to ensure that and I suppose this goes back to the argument of TDD. If you're testing something afterwards, you need to ensure that that test is actually a genuine test, right? So doing TDD, you're working towards a failing test, right? So that test fails first. That is a good thing, because then you can code to make that pass. But when you're doing the tests on the other way around, so when you're testing it after the code has gone live, you don't have that luxury of having a failing test. So you have to do it backwards. You have to make sure that that test that you've actually written is a genuine test that will genuinely fail if something is wrong. You might just think, oh yeah, that test passes, but you've actually written the test wrong and you're testing something else. For example, for example, this could be, instead of using text, I could be testing for HTML. So I could be checking the length of HTML, and there could be a div in here, right? So if a blank div in here, so that blank div would obviously have a length of greater than 0 because there's something in there. But because it's HTML, it would come out with a pass because there is something in there. There is a length to the contents of message board. It's a blank div, and you would get a false positive. And the reason why you've got that is because your test is wrong, because it's not genuine, because you've forgotten that text is actually different to HTML. But anyway, let's now go back to that. So what else can we do? Well, we can ensure that these. Where are we? So that's the street's own bit. That's the panel heading bit. That's fine. Here we go. This is what I wanted. The funds. We can ensure that the funds have more than, have the same amount of funds as it is in the config. If you didn't watch the one last week, the Code and Coffee and Code last week, what I've got in here, not in there, in here, in the config in players, is this is all driven by config, right? So if I was to change one of these, then it would change the amount of funds that the players have. So I can actually test that config works. So what I can do in here is write another test. Bear with me a minute. Yeah, I've come prepared. I have juice and coffee. So let's add another one. So testing, I'm going to do the computer first. Testing computer funds. Okay, so the funds is in, where are we? That's player 2, which is the user. So computer is player 1. So we're looking for that element. Okay, which is, so instead of message board, we're looking for player 1. And we're also looking for .funds, I think. Yep. And we're looking for, oh, sorry, I should have done this. What am I doing? What a fool. Copy that. Sorry. Control Z is your friend. There we go. So player 1 funds .test. And yeah, so it's set to 0 at the moment, and then it will increment to 1500. So let's just test for that now. So where length is equal to, whoops, sorry, 1500. I've done it again. copy Z. Sorry, it's in this one. Oh yeah, yep, closing thing. And so we have correct, or not we have, computer has correct funds. Computer has correct funds, like so. Let's save that. Refresh. So now we've got the second test. The first test I've changed, so it's contents is greater than 0. And on the second test, computer has correct funds. Now, the way we can check that this is a genuine test is actually manipulate the the config. So the config, as I mentioned here, players.js. So if I was to change that to be, instead of 1500, let's change that to be, it needs to be in this one. Let's change that to just be 100. Save. Refresh, and now it's failed. Now notice that, I mean, obviously we don't have the actual output here, and you could argue that you could just test it by going into the config and then pressing refresh, and because you've eyeballed that is actually changed, then that is a test. But the whole point for me to do this, or of me doing this, is that now I have repeatable tests. Right now, I can ensure that there is that the message board has content, even when I've changed that configuration. So beforehand, I had zero confidence that the message board would have any contents had I have changed when I have changed that that player's configuration. But now I can ensure that if I was to change that, this isn't going to be affected. That's the whole point of tests. It's just basically giving you some element of reassurance and confidence that the things that you're refactoring, the things that you're changing, is not affecting anything else. So let's go back to the code and sort this out. So that was 100. I'm going to set that back to 15. Save. Refresh. And I suppose because we've done the computer funds, we should also do the user's funds. So jump back into here, go back into the index, the test index, sorry. And I'm just going to have testing player funds. So that's player 2. And that again is 1500. Save that. So that should just bring me, yep. And again, to test that out, you would do, let's change the player's test. Let's change that to 200. Save that, and now that should fail. Yep. Okay, cool. Excellent. Okay, so you can see now that these tests are slowly starting to build up, which is great. Let's let's go back to here. Okay, so other bits of things that we can test is we can ensure that the streets owned is empty when the game fires up. So I'll just add that in now. So again, this is player 1, and then the UL of streets owned. So let's go back to here. We're just going to copy that, paste that in, testing. So we'll do computer. And that's player 1, because that's the computer. And we're going to do, I think it is streets owned, and we're looking for HTML this time. And we're ensuring that length is in fact 0. So we do length, and we are checking that that is 0. So computer has no streets. Add that, save. Okay, excellent. Okay, let's see if that has done anything. Okay, no, we've got a fail. It's expected null. That's interesting. So obviously a problem with the code. Perhaps we haven't found that yet. So what we could do is just do a console.log just to test that out. Let's grab that. And I'm just going to put on the web inspector. I refresh here. Let's bring that down. So that's showing all. So that now that's saying that we have something that's undefined here. So that's the issue. The actual element is undefined. So go back into the code. So let's have a look. So player one is the, what am I looking for here? Player one is the ID. Oh, no, it's not. Sorry, it needs to be player box. Player one is just that ID. Player box is the whole thing. Now, this is interesting because I can't, because the container div doesn't have an ID, I can't directly pinpoint the actual box that I want to test, you know, in an isolated way. I could check that it's player box that has this this data attribute 1 and 2, but there is no guarantee that that is going to be unique, right? Because if I was to set that to 1, the system will probably still work. So I could either change the ID of that, put that ID up here, and do some alterations. So now we are talking about refactoring the actual DOM to make the tests easier. And I find this all the time with PHP. When you're finding areas that you can't test very easily, it can be, I'm not going to say it's usually, it can be a sign that the code needs to be refactored because something is squirreled away somewhere in a very sort of like God class or something that is very difficult to test. And you try and think of a way of how to actually expose the elements that you wish to test. And one of the ways to do that is refactoring. So in order for me to expose this, I mean, obviously, I can say, well, let's just do a loop through all the player boxes. But I might want to be testing a single one, right? So you can't just sort of that is a quick fix. I suppose for now I can just test the player ID. But what I'm going to do is copy player 1, and I know that this will break. And I'm going to change that to be player 2. And I know that this isn't unique. So what I'm going to do is just hyphen these things. And I'm going to use hyphen as a way of determining the elements that I wish to refactor. I know we've got hyphens in here, so it's going to be a bit tricky. Maybe I should do underscores. Okay, let's change that. So let's go up here. So now with this, I can do player 1, save that, refresh, duplicate jQuery selector. Why is that duped? That looks good to me. Right, save that. Refresh here. Let's see what we've got. Okay, it's still undefined. Maybe I've... Let's see. So, player 1. Copy. ID player 1. Streets owned. UL. All right, let's just bring it back to ensure that we actually have that available. Of course, it's a syntax error. Oh yeah, silly me. Okay, so player one is, we have that, and inside player one we have the panel, body, streets owned. Okay, so it's a UL streets owned. Okay, so can I do ul.streetsowned? Refresh. Yeah, I can. Excellent. Okay, and that shouldn't have anything in there, which is fine. Okay. So it was just the way I. It's just the way I wrote that, which is okay. That's fine. So let's save that. Move that over here. Excellent. Computer has no streets to start with. That's fine. Okay, good. So that's worked. And if I went back into here, we can remove that now because we don't need that. So because I've added player 1_1, I can now alter the ones above. So I can do player 1 funds, player 2 space. Oops. Funds. Save that. Excellent. So that they still work. That's good. And again, what I'm going to do here is just do so player and change that as well. So now we've altered the ID. So before it was player and then 1 without a space or without anything in between, and now it's player _1, player _2. I'm using the underscores to denote that I want to refactor some bits. So I suppose what I should do is I want to remove player 1. I want to remove player 2 and just have these containers. I know, however, that if I was to do that, remove these two, it will probably break the not only the display but also the code, because I think what's happening is that in the code I've foolishly hard-coded these things in. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it like that. But what I would do is up here, I'm going to do a to-do, replace all what's the best way I can say this? Replace all elements. Replace all element IDs with underscore underscored counterparts, right? And I'm going to do an example player 1 equals player -1. And I suppose what I should do is create myself a Git task as well to do this. So I'm going to save that, or Git issue. So you can see that this is a way that you can start building up your tests, right? So now we've got a whole bunch coming through, and you can see how quickly that these things are starting to develop. So I'm starting to get a little bit more confidence in the code. And you can tell things to rerun, and you can isolate that test as well, which is pretty handy. Which is good. So yeah, I think what I'm going to do is call that a day for now, because the rest of it is just basically copying other visible elements and just ensuring that they're not empty. Also, I need to go and get my dinner. So tonight, I think, is going to be a takeaway. But anyway, thank you ever so much, guys, for watching. If you've got any questions about QUnit, if you've got any questions on the Monopoly game, I suppose what I should do is give you all the code here. So I'm just going to paste that in. So if you want to check that out, please do so. If you want to do any pull requests on that, then go ahead. Be my guest. There's no problem there. This is something that I created, like I said, for an interview that I did, or an interview that I was trying to get. They asked me to produce Monopoly in an evening. Unfortunately, I didn't get the interview. And it was one of those interviews that I didn't get any feedback on either, which is a bit frustrating. But I thought that I would publish this anyway to GitHub, and I did that 2 years ago. And now I'm sort of looking back on this and seeing if there's ways I can improve it, one of which is that the actual code that I'm using, jQuery, is extremely outdated. And my thought process on this, on developing, has changed significantly in those years, as everyone's thought processes and experience of programming improves and progresses. And before I do anything like changing the versions of things, I want to create some unit tests, some functional tests, acceptance tests, to build myself up with confidence that I can actually do that without breaking stuff. And I guess today has been the first sort of push on that, using things like Gulp and QUnit to actually build those bits and pieces. So what I'm going to do is commit all of this into the branch in a minute on the PFWD repository. But before I go, I want to just quickly mention again the course that I've got on Manning, which is Docker in Motion. I'll put a link to that now back into the chat. Docker in Motion is a course that I've been working on for quite some time. It's now been released into MEEP, which is Manning's early access program. You can get that with a 50% discount, which I will also post in the chat again, with this code here. So this, just to give you a brief overview of this course, it does basically all the fundamentals of Docker right from the start. So it talks about the differences between images and containers, the differences between virtualization, containerization, and all that stuff. This is why I'm wearing this Manning instructor t-shirt. It also has a forum, so if you've got any questions on Docker, then you can talk to me and the rest of the community about it. So do check that out. It's about, well, at the moment it's over 4 hours worth of stuff. There's, as it says up here, there's over 2 hours worth of hands-on practical stuff. There's even more than that coming on. It's in MEEP, so I'm still working on the final final units. There's more. I mean, there's only 2 things here, but I'm working on the 5th and 6th, and there's going to be a 7th portion of this table of contents. So we're also talking about containers in the sense of volumes, so storing things in the volumes, and also there's going to be a big portion on here about Docker Compose as well. So do check that out if you want. Put the code in the chat for a 50% off. That code, I should say, is limited until, is limited until September the 8th. So after that, then it'll obviously be full price, which is $59.99. But do check that out. If you don't know, Manning is a fantastic platform for programmers and developers. I'm very proud to be on this platform. So yeah, do check it out. Thanks ever so much, guys. I'm going to grab some takeaway because I am hungry. But yeah, speak to you again soon. Happy coding, everyone. Cheers. Bye.